There we go. So today for this session on calculating your vote goal or calculating your win number, I am really pleased that we are delivering this training today in partnership with the National Democratic Training Committee, NDTC, and we have Judson today as our expert presenter. So Judson, I'm gonna hand the reins to you. Oh, I can't hear you. Did your microphone disconnect?
No, I am operating with equipment that is brand new to me. So it's operator error on that one. But I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Judson Scanlon. I have been working in politics since the late 90s and began my start in Washington State working against anti-gay initiatives that were moving from Oregon into Washington years ago before we started the marriage fights, before we started larger equality fights. I have been training with NDTC since 2016 and hope to continue training with them as long as they're in existence. It's a favorite pastime and hobby of mine now. Um, so anyway, I hope today to answer questions around win numbers, vote differences, things that actually are the elements to help us win. So with that, we'll just get started with me presenting. How does that sound? And as we go, I'm going to be asking Sarah to actually help me with questions that are in the chat. So feel free to either stop us or you know, let us know if there are questions that we are not answering. What we're going to be talking about is really heavy and really dense and requires us to turn on the scientific and less of the analytic. But it answers questions about resourcing and how we actually move through our campaigns. With that being said, if you need additional resources or want to check out the resources that we have available at National Democratic Training Committee, scan this QR code and you can get started on all the curriculum that we have. And take a look at what we're going to be covering today. So let's get going with calculating your vote goal. We don't have a lot of work to do around introductions. I've read through the chat and I have seen where you're joining us and where candidates are coming from. And I love that we have both staff and candidates on this call, and we have people who are running for the first time and have run campaigns before. This is, I think, one of those areas of work that I don't think is considered sexy and is considered fun, but it's one of the most important things that we can actually go over and understand. I'm not going to go through a bunch of rules about participation because Christy handled a bunch of that going into this. So the one thing I will say is if you have questions, ask the questions. I have a very casual presentation style. I want to make sure that we're getting all of the information to you in a clear and understandable way so that there are fewer questions that you go into your campaign with. What we'll know at the end of this presentation is understanding the role of the vote goal in determining how you actually win. We'll talk about the different ways that we look at data to calculate those numbers and to look at those important numbers and why it's so important that we have to know these vote goals and why it's important for us to make this a part of our plan as we move forward. So you've put the information on the icebreaker that where you're running from. I will tell you that I have run for office before myself as a state legislator in Arkansas, where I live with my wife. Um, and it is one of the hardest things to do on a continual basis. And I have nothing but respect for people who do it. And in places like the South, where I live in Arkansas, it's really hard to run as a Democrat and a progressive candidate in an area where we have not had the best support over the past few years. So I really have a lot of respect for people who are undertaking this in this day and age because it feels like it's much harder now than it used to be. So let's just jump in and talk about the goal of and how we actually plan for our vote. It's really basic scientific exercise that's based on previous numbers that we all have been tracking forever. So your win number, the most important term that you're going to want to know is the win number, which is the number of votes that you need to win. plus one, right? So in a 50% two-person race, you're going to look for 50% of the projected turnout plus one vote. And your vote goal, right, is going to be that actual number that you're hitting for IDs. Like this is your vote goal is going to be that number that you're striving for that gives you the information that you need in order to know when you're winning. So in a two-person race, you're going to be that 50% plus one, but you're also going to give yourself a cushion between 2 and 5% of projected turnout so that you are not underperforming or overperforming and you're actually using resources based on that calculation, right? So the win number is what you need to win. The vote goal is that little extra cushion, that 52 to 55% of the turnout, right?
Can you
So the reason, yeah, go ahead.
can you explain a little bit more? I know what IDs are, but can you explain a little bit more about what you meant by IDs?
Sure. So in order to track your vote goal, in order to know when you're actually getting close to that ultimate goal of people that you want to identify as your supporters, that IDs are what we is the jargon that we use to talk about people who have given us a determination on how they're going to perform. So they can be positive IDs and IDs of people who are voting against you. So that vote goal number is basically the harvest, the total harvested number of IDs you're hoping to push for in order to win. Does that make sense? Positive IDs.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. So the vote goal is actually going to also help you determine how much money you're going to need to raise and how much human capacity you're going to need, how much help you're going to need in order to reach that number. The larger the number, the more volunteer support, the more human capacity, and the more money you're going to have to raise. Because this vote goal is going to tell you who you need to mail to, who needs to be in your advertising community for your digital ads, who needs to be in your walk community for your knocking in your door in your canvassing operation, who needs to be in your text world and the people that are going to be receiving texts from you on behalf of your campaign. All of these things are things that draw down on both your bottom line and your human capacity. So when you're looking at and building these goals, I have a tendency to look at a calendar and perform backwards. So I look at when I need to have numbers in place. For instance, if you're working in a primary, when does the primary vote start? When does early vote start? When does absentee voting start? And starting there and working backwards, I determine what numbers I need to be hitting throughout that calendar period. So if we know we need 10,000 voter IDs, positive IDs, the week before the mail absentee ballots are going out, then I need to know that how many do I have weekly to get to that 10,000. So starting at the end of the calendar and working backwards helps you understand what stage of the campaign you're going to be in any given time, whether you're going to be in infrastructure building at the start of your campaign, persuasion, or GOTV. Does that make sense? All right. So that being said, volunteer targets, establishing your GOTV universe, knowing how many persuasion volunteer targets you're going to need, establishing your persuasion universe, all of these things block into the overall vote plan, the overall campaign plan. So determining your vote goal is the first task in order to build a solid campaign plan. This all rolls in a calendar schedule. And this calendar schedule is not based on any particular location, but it's just based on an overarching 12-week campaign when, based in the end of it as is when GOTV begins. So GOTV begins if you're a vote by mail state, it begins when the ballots drop. If you're an early vote state, it begins with early voting. You just determined that, and then counting back, you've got between 10 and 16 weeks of really diligent work that has to take place. And the more time you have, the more successful you can be because you have more time to build your field teams to help you reach those voter contact goals. So the first thing you do is you establish how many votes you need to win. What is your GOTV universe? What is your base vote? How many people turn out without your help? How many people need to turn out with your additional help? And I'll explain that in just 2 seconds. So we'll stop here. How many questions have I stirred up? I can't be making myself that well heard.
I don't see any in the chat right now, although maybe folks are typing them in. Feel free to drop them in as we go, and we'll call them out at.
Absolutely. Fabulous. All right, well then let's keep rolling. So let's talk about vote goal math. So we've already introduced the win number. We've already talked about vote goal. Now let's talk about voter turnout. And voter turnout is a percentage based on previous elections and based on an estimate of where we think the energy is around elections. So you'll see it in a range of percentage points of the larger electorate. I'm not going to worry about this slide. I'm just going to go on from it. If you have a question about it, we can go back to it. But that was a slide that talked about individual, like moving decimal points. We're not going to worry about this. I'm going to use this right now as an example to show you in one particular legislative race what we do in order to determine the win number and the voter turnout and the vote deficit. And we're going to start with the previous 3 years that are like our current election year. So for instance, those of us that are going into 2026 elections will want to look at 3 previous years that were off-year elections that were with an energy level that's similar to what we're experiencing, which is going to be hard to come by. But you estimate the turnout percent based on previous elections. So in this case, in 2012, we had 291,000 registered voters, and of those, 72% turned out, which gave a total vote cast of 209,000 voters. And you can see the same thing for the next 2 cycles that they looked at. 302,000, a 72% turnout, 325,000, a 74% turnout, and you can see the total vote cast numbers based on that. So in order to determine what we think is going to be the vote turnout, you want to take the percentage of turnout for the previous 3 election years and do an average. So in this situation, you can look at it and say a reasonable turnout is about 72%, with a really high turnout based on previous experience to be 74%. And so you look at that 74 and that 72, and you base this year's projected turnout on those numbers. Say, for instance, if we're in 2020, if the next one is 2024, then we would look at and we would project that we're looking at about a 74% turnout. And we know that it's not on the scale, but we know that we have 347,000 new registered voters. So we presume we experience a 256,000 person turnout is what we're going to project. Now, in order to get that, then we have to figure out, well, of that, what is our projected win number of those 74% that turn out? What do we need to look at? And so we're going to take the 256,000, we're going to cut it in half, and we're going to add 1 vote. So we think that in order to win, the least number we need to get is going to be 128,396 voters. That's the least number we're going to get. The highest number we can project to get is 141,000 right now, right? Now this number, this 128,000 and this number 141,000, those estimations are made up of communities of voters who have taken action in the past. And that's where we begin to figure out, and we kind of look to figure out, where do we find the vote deficit that we need to determine given the performance in previous years of people who are like us, running. So we're gonna before we get into defining the universe and moving into that, am I making sense so far?
Judson, we did have a question about
Cool.
why 3 years, why not 5 years? I guess what I would say, and I'm interested to hear what you think, it might depend on what kind of a race it is. So if it is a municipal race and that election is held every 4 years, I'll probably look at the last three cycles, but I might not look at five previous elections if it's every 4 years, because particularly here in North Carolina, our demographics were growing so fast. 5 years ago might not be a good indicator of what to expect in the future. But if you're running for a state legislative race and it's every 2 years, I might look at every five under those circumstances. Um, Judson,
Well,
what are your thoughts?
so my thought is that what you're looking for is an estimation. You're not looking for the exact science. So we're not really trying to get the absolute number. We're trying to get an estimation for resource allocations. And so we don't have to go overboard and be specific. We can look at a general idea for past three performances. And again, we're not looking at the legislative or the specific races that yet. Right now, we're just trying to get a general idea of what we think turnout might be. But you're right, you're not right. I mean, when it comes to resource allocation, which ultimately we have to get in the mind frame of understanding why we want these numbers and you're just trying to figure out how best to slice your pie and allocate your capital and not necessarily trying to determine what you think the absolute answer is going to be. Does that make sense?
I think that that's fair, that you are using this information to inform your educated guess and your
Right.
assumptions. We
Right.
have two more questions. One I think I can answer. Should I be looking at vote numbers within my specific ward? So you should be looking at the history for the exact seat that you're running for. So if you're running for mayor this year, what happened for mayor 4 years ago, for example, instead of looking at like the whole county or the whole state, it will be far more helpful to look at your exact race.
Right.
And then a question as well, Judson, that I'll let you take because I had this challenge myself when I ran for office. How do you determine your win number if it's a five-person race with, excuse me, five people running three seats?
So that is a much longer lecture on estimations and percentages, but every race is specific. And if you you can identify the number of votes it's going to take to win any one of those three positions, and then you determining that based on vote goals from previous elections, like how voters have turned out in previous elections specific to the type of election it is, whether it's ranked choice balloting, uh, whether it's top three vote getters. You basically just have to look at previous years and what people have actually won with in order to help determine what you think you need. But again, it's not an absolute science. It is a guesstimation to help you understand how to allocate resources and know what targets exist for you to hit as your campaign goes. Christy, do you think that's an okay answer to that?
Yeah, I agree. I would probably be looking to see, maybe instead of these percentages, how many votes did the winners get last time? Assuming, last time,
Right.
time before was three seats, how many people ran? That will help inform the assumptions you make for this.
Yeah.
And if you want, I'll plug this again towards the end, but you could come to the candidate office hours we're having on Mondays. I'll find the link and drop in the chat here in a second. And I'd be happy to argue, debate, hammer out win numbers for different race dynamics because, it can be as simple or as complex as you want to make it. But don't go too deep down the rabbit hole because it's more important to be talking to those voters.
That's true. It's absolutely true. All right. We can come back to some of these questions. Are there any more questions that I need to answer right away?
There is one more, and
Great.
maybe something Christy wants to answer. Where do we get data in North Carolina on current registered voters?
Ah, so if you are running for office this year or managing somebody's campaign this year, the North Carolina Democratic Party is offering Vote Builder for free to candidates this year. So Vote Builder is the database tool that we use. We get the information from the Board of Elections, and then over the past 12 plus years, we have been supplementing that information, which helps us better understand and target our voters. So I will find the link. If you're a candidate or managing someone's campaign, you can request access to Vote Builder. There are also some resources on the State Board of Elections website. I did a training session 2 weeks ago on developing your campaign strategy, and I talked about a bunch of those resources. So I will drop the link for the recording of that session. So I'm going to go round up some links and put them in the chat.
And I will also say that there's a lot of curriculum involving, training around Vote Builder on the NDTC website. You can get lots of training that's available to you. All you have to do is sign up for the training, and that requires you to say, yes, you're running as a Democrat.
And I'm doing live Vote Builder training sessions over the next several weeks for candidates as well.
Beautiful. So getting back to this and moving back into this heady stuff that we're working on, we've talked about vote goal, we've talked about all of the numbers that go into it. Now let's talk about vote deficit. This is the first time we've used this term. And what vote deficit is the difference between your base number of votes that you've seen performing and the number of votes that you need in order to win. So the vote deficit, again, is the difference between performance in the past and the number needed to win. In a good Democratic district, there may be no vote deficit. You may be like battling it out between good Democrats in order to see who best represents. But in most districts, there's the performance number and then the vote deficit. Now, the second term you're going to hear is persuasion universe. Now, that is part of the voters in the vote deficit that you need to persuade to vote for you. These are swing voters, people who perform one way in one election and another way in another election based on what they hear. But your persuasion universe is going to be part of the universe of people that you talk to in order to make up your vote deficit. All right. So we'll scoot up from there. And this is kind of this is an inverted paragraph, triangle for me. I mean, I love triangles and I love the work that we use, but I would actually flip this and I would say that our base party voters are the people that are actually going to perform every time. These are the people that have voted for the worst candidate just simply because they were Democrats. These are people who turn out for every election, regardless of whether or not they have like a personal need to it. These are people we refer to as perfect voters. They're 4 of 4 voters. They're frequent voters. They're referred to all the time in different manners, but they are your base voters, the people who will vote for yellow dog Democrats, people who vote for Democrats regardless of who they are. Then you're going to have high frequency voters, voters who potentially swing from one issue to another, who vote on ideology, who vote on their particular feelings about a candidate, which may be correct or incorrect based on values. And then you're going to have low frequency voters. These are people who might vote in one of every election, or who have been registered to vote and who have never voted before. They've never taken those steps to vote. So your universe of voters will be broken up in this way, whether or not they're ideologically with you, whether or not they just hate the other candidate, whether or not they're yellow dog Democrats and will vote for a yellow dog if they have a D behind their name, and newly registered voters, and people who are just turning 18 in time for the next election and can register. So your segments are going to be broken up in many different ways. They're also going to be broken up geographically. People perform very similarly based on where they live, what cars they drive, what magazines they read, where they bank. how much they have in loans, what their credit card values are. There are similarities that run across all of those areas. Then those will be part of your universe segmentation. So know that in the situation when it comes down to planning, we want to know all of these things because of the way we're going to contact them over the course of the campaign. We want to know as much information about people as possible so that we know where they fit in our campaign plan. And that's what makes up our voters. So you'll have, this is a chart that we use for the last 20 years to help explain the difference between our friends, our potential friends, and our enemies. So you'll see in this upper corner where it says always vote Democratic in the first column, and then it's broken out into 3 segments: high frequency voters, infrequent voters, and low frequency voters. I would also add in there newly registered, just as a general area. You're going to pull your volunteers and your donors from those people who have always voted and who are high frequency voters for Democrats. Those are going to be, that's where you go for your volunteers. And if you've never recruited volunteers before, then I implore you to sign up for Vote Builder, pull a list of people in your precinct or your ward who always vote, and make that your first call, because your first phone calls can help build your volunteer team by going into those areas of people who actively already support you simply because you have a Democrat D behind your name. So that's going to be the people who always vote Democratic, who you've seen in communities. Those are going to be the people that are the richest for you when it comes to both new volunteers and new donors. The second group is infrequent voters. Those are going to be people you put into your GOTV universe. Your infrequent voters are the people who are going to get so much love for you, because the more love you give them, the more likely they are to turn out. And by love, I mean a door knock, a flyer, a phone call, a text, a touch in some manner. That first universe, the first GOTV universe you're going to build, are people who vote Democrat but just need a little extra love to get out the door. The third universe you're going to build are people who are in that persuasion area, right? The persuadable voters who may vote for you sometimes, but vote for other people, vote for people who appeal to them that you may not agree with other times. These swing voters, that it's based on the idea that 40% of the people are with you all the time, 40% of the people are against you all of the time, and that 20% in the middle are the ones that actually help you win. So those swing voters, that 20% of the middle, is how you actually, where you begin to find some of your vote deficit. You're going to find it also in the infrequent voters who are in partisan performance based on previous performance. But the thing that you have to remember, and the reason we do this, is to show you that low frequency voters who have to be persuaded, who are opposed to you and who need the most work, are not who you want to go to. Low frequency voters who are with you 100%, who have signed on to petitions or have done a little bit of something in the past to give you, who have voted in Democratic primaries but haven't voted in Democratic or in larger elections. Those infrequent voters that are democratically leaning are the ones that you actually want to give love to, because they're going to help build your vote deficit universe. You add that into newly registered voters and first-time voters. Those are the people who actually are going to help you define your win number and make up the difference in your vote deficit. But you don't want to put people who frequently vote Republican. You're not going to you shouldn't spend a lot of time convincing real Republican voters to vote for you, because it's a lost cause when it comes to resources. Does that make sense? These are the people who always vote Republican, who are voters, maybe infrequent voters, but they always vote Republican. They're people that I refer to as FIDO. Forget it and drive on. Go to the next voter who could be with you. Does that make sense?
I think I
Okay.
would just add a little bit of context. Um, so a lot of people this year are running in municipal races. These are nonpartisan races. North Carolina is a real 50-50 state. So you will probably talk to some Democratic leading Republicans. What we have built in terms of the models that are available for candidates to use in Vote Builder is like we're not sending you to MAGA doors. We're not having you talk to the most extreme Republicans, but I know like my grandma's registered as a Republican, has been her whole life. She has not voted for a Republican since George W. Bush abandoned New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina. That was the breaking point for her. I can't do nothing to get her to change her voter registration, but I know she does not vote for Republicans anymore. So I want to, what the theme of what Judson's saying, I agree with, which is like far right, radical MAGA is not where I would invest my time. Realistically, on the ground here in North Carolina and for these nonpartisan races, you will be talking to Democrats, but the way we have structured data to support you is that they're like, you will be talking to Republicans. They're like democratically leaning Republicans, and you're going for a nonpartisan race. So you don't even have to bring up party. You can really focus on your values and what you want to bring to your community.
So it and absolutely we'll back up Christy on that because we're talking about people who ID as a particular party, and then you've got scoring and you've got other things that give you additional information to that. And that is absolutely true when it comes to looking at past performance. And again, people behave in like ways. So emotional responses to elections do not translate so much to longevity, you know, which I agree with. And being in Arkansas, 100% understand. Absolutely understand. Okay, so this is where we get into head scratching kind of work that I'm going to take some time and make sure I'm explaining in a way that makes sense. Okay. You've got your persuasion universe, and your persuasion universe is made up of those people that you need to talk to in order to hear them say they will be voting for you. You want to give them every opportunity. This persuasion universe is going to get the largest number of touches. This is where you're going to put the most of your budget into moving persuadable voters. And we want to move the persuadable voters because we know that it takes a lot to get to them. And in order for us to make sure that we're getting to the appropriate number and we're building in a big enough cushion in our campaigns, we actually want to make sure that we're looking at the voter deficit in a way and doing that in a way that actually gives us enough of a window. If we were to say our win number is using a smaller race, if we say that our win number is 2,000 voters and our voter deficit is approximately 350 voters, then in our planning, we want to make sure that we're building a voter deficit of 750 voters to 1,000 voters because we want to make sure that we're covering our deficit with enough emphasis. So your voter deficit in your planning, you want to make sure you're trying to reach 3 times the number of your actual voter deficit. I want to stop there. Does that make sense to folks? You know your win number, you know your base, you know your voter deficit. Your ID program is going to be targeted at 3 times the size of your voter deficit.
I do have a question.
Yep.
Okay, so what is the difference between the persuasion universe and like the size? I'm getting into the weeds here.
It's okay. We'll get into the weeds a little bit.
So you pull a list of
Yep.
people you want to reach. Is the persuasion universe are the people that we actually ID and put in the bucket to continue having a relationship with, or are we talking that first list? Do you know what I mean? Am I making sense?
Yeah, so let me break it down. Let me see if I can explain back to you what I think I heard your question was. Um, say you've got a voter universe, a large universe of voters. You've got 25,000 people who can vote in your election. And of those 25,000 people, right, you need to identify 7,500 who are going to be your vote deficit is about 2,500, meaning that you're going to have to identify 7,500 previously not identified voters to help you win. So if you know your base is a certain size and you've got a certain number of people that you're going to be dependent upon, your voter deficit is going to be that number between the base and your vote and your win number. And it can be made up of any number of different people from any number of different universes, because your list is going to be made up, your total list in universe is going to be made up of the people that you need to vote for you. Your per day list in your target universes are going to be made up of that persuasion universe that you need to make sure you're touching. So of the larger list of people that you need to turn out, you're going to have fewer people of your base in your daily list of touches. Like your walk list is going to contain fewer people than should be in your base, because your base doesn't need as much attention to turn out. They're going to be naturally drawn to your work, to seeing your activity, and are going to be naturally engaged. So your persuasion universe makes up your vote deficit. So now I'm confusing myself.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's good. The vote deficit is made up of your persuasion universe. You're going to target those people. Significant amount of your resources are going to targeting in order for planning purposes. If you have a vote deficit of 2,500, you're going to want to create 7,500 IDs.
I think that answers. So we're gonna take and I hope I'm not confusing people. So we're gonna take let's say a bucket of so we're using the 7,500. We're gonna take a bucket of like 2,000 and try to find 75 in that. Am I making?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And I'm sorry if I'm confusing anyone. I apologize.
It's hard not to be confused with this. This is very confusing to think about. You're going from the idea of talking to voters and getting them to turn out to you to the idea of determining how many of those people you need to talk to, and that's always confusing. And everybody has a different idea on what works best and what you do and what numbers you look at. So it's really easy to get totally sidetracked on this stuff. But remembering the very core elements, you have your base voters who turn out in every election. You have your win number that you need in order to win. Your vote deficit is the difference between your base and your win number, and your persuasion universe needs to be 3 times larger than your vote deficit. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Will you repeat that, please?
Yeah.
Just
You've
that
got
last.
you've got your universe of voters are made up of your base voters, people who turn out regardless of what you do. There'll be yellow dog Democrats they're going to vote for the Democrat on the ballot regardless. Your win number, which is the number that you need in order to win your election, and your vote deficit, which is the difference between your base and your win number. Now, in order for your planning purposes, you want to have the individual IDs that equal to 3 times the number of your vote deficit. If your vote deficit is 2,500, you're shooting for 7,500 IDs in your campaign.
What does it mean to shoot for 7,500 IDs in your campaign? Can you elaborate on that sentence?
I sure can. That's a great question. That means that you have to have enough conversations with enough people to have in your computer system, in your vote builder, 7,500 people have said yes, they are going to vote for you. So you're building universes of people that you are going to reach out to. You're going to be having conversations through telephone, through doors, through texting with people across your district. You're building your GOTV universe, which is made up of all of the positive IDs in your system. So if you've had every conversation you have, you want to make sure that you are tracking how they respond. If they say, yes, we'll be voting for you, then that is a positive ID in the system. Christy, you have a question?
That's what I was going to say. I was going to define a positive ID. So when you talk to somebody and say, I'm running for office and I want to provide these benefits to the community, can I count on your vote on election day? If somebody says, yes, I'm going to vote for you, that's a positive ID. And because not everybody actually makes it to the polls, that's why you need to have more people who have said, yes, I support you, then you need actual votes, because people will say they support you and then they might change their mind or they just might not show up. So part of this is having as many people as possible as you need who have said, yes, I support you. And then like in mid-October, you're going to go back to them and say, thank you for your support. Let me tell you where your polling location is. What day are you planning to go vote? And that's GOTV, get out the vote.
Ultimately, all of the work that you're doing right now, building your plan, putting the numbers into place, is all about determining what your get out the vote universe is and how many resources you need in order to push those people out the door when the election happens.
I train these the phone bank stuff a lot, and what I tell people with the point where we're at right now with the building the universe, using that jargon like what Christy was saying kind of loses people. I say we're going to make X many friends, and these are the friends that we're going to make and touch, continue having a relationship with, make sure they get out to vote. Does that help?
I think if it works for you, then that's great. But I think every candidate uses their tools and talents in the best way to build their campaign. So yeah, if that works, that's great. All right, can we move it? Does that help everybody? So here we go. This is exactly what I was just trying to say. And here in this situation, you've got a vote deficit of 19,000 voters. So their base is 121. Their expected turnout's 141. That leaves approximately 20,000 voters. That's their vote deficit, right? And you can, like, these resources available to you. There are ways we will provide you all the information you need in order to determine these and how we go about doing it. We've got all kinds of stuff laid out for you, and continue asking the questions, okay? But this, like, it's so meaty and so dense to talk about this stuff that I want to make sure that we're recognizing why we're doing it at the same time that the urgency exists, right? So looking at this question, how do the different campaign functions, whether it's field, fundraising, communications, how are those all shaped by your vote goal and your voter universe? This is a free conversation. Like, give me, like, show me. Oh, you're so quiet.
Maybe everybody's chewing their lunch.
Maybe they are chewing their lunch, and maybe I'm not. Anyway,
okay.
Here's what I think. Go ahead, Megan.
I've got some input there.
Good. Go for it. Megan and then Sam.
Strictly Samuel. Samuel L. Hawk.
Thank you,
like
Samuel
L. Jackson, sans the expletives.
Got it.
So I think there's a direct and immediate causality that exists between all of those areas, and that plus or minus differential, if you will, when it comes to the numbers. And if your movement in those particular areas is solid, it's coupled with having the most up-to-date and accurate information regarding the numbers plus or minus, you're going to come out not only with a better experience, but at a higher point in those voting numbers.
So how do you register and how do you gauge whether or not your quote unquote movement is going right?
A few things. My recommendations would be, but not are solely, but to be intentionally engaged with the Board of Elections in your area. They can provide you with a pretty good amount of adequate information as it relates to historical numbers, voting outcomes. Now, I can't speak for everybody's Board of Elections, but specifically here in Guilford County, they are very intentional with doing breakdown numbers as it relates to individual parties, those who are non-declared in a party, male-female percentages, cultural percentages, as well as area percentages.
So some of that I don't disagree with, but I think that what I'm trying to, the piece I'm trying to get to is you can have all of that information in data, but why do getting these numbers influence and what impact do they have on your overall campaign? And then how do you gauge whether or not you're actually in a good place? I'm going to go to Megan because Megan actually had input, and then Pam, I think, real quickly. We only have about 8 minutes left, and I don't want to take up too much time. And I know I've got about a few more slides I want to get through.
Gotcha.
So Megan, you were talking earlier too.
Well, I had put a question in the chat, and it may be, I think there's a great workshop coming up in August 18th. But how do you drill down to know that if you have your base voters, how many times do you need to touch base with them? And what sort of strategy? Is it knocking on their door? Is it texting? Is it calling? Like,
these are great questions.
Can you drill down to know, okay, I need to go knock on these doors. I need to call these folks. I need to mail to these folks. And I know there's some you just ignore.
I think Christy is actually shaking her head yes and is agreeing with you. And I think that there is an additional training, but that's a much longer conversation. But Thanks. Christy, you do have something coming up quickly.
Yes, so I dropped the link in the chat. That's exactly what the field organizing training is on August 18th. We'll share some kind of best practices and rules of thumb, and then I will give you resources so that you can think through your specific race dynamics and program to build that out for yourself.
Okay, Pam.
Megan got it. Megan got it exactly. You're getting it, Megan. Yeah, so the base voters are the ones you'll reach out for fundraising and to volunteer. You might be able to use some of those middle voters for volunteers as well. And then doing phone banks and door knocking is the best way to identify those. That's why when we have the phone banks and the door knocking, we mark down somebody as they're a supporter. So that puts those people in that bucket.
That's right. And all of this goes into the rest of your like your vote goal goes into making every other piece of your campaign plan functional and real, right? And your vote goal is going to tell you where the resources are allocated, how much resources you need, where you need to raise more money, and how, like what's the best way of getting there. So when you're looking at the campaign plan, right, the vote goal is kind of setting the stage for everything else, what your strategy is, what your tactics are, everything. The vote goal goes into fundraising. I figured out that for my campaign, my votes cost approximately $12 a piece. And so I know that in order to win an election, and I know that my vote goal is 100,000 voters, and I know that they cost I'm going to have to raise $1,200,000. And that's the thing that I know that I'm going to have to go around and base my campaign plan on. So it all goes into everything. The numbers go into everything, and tracking those numbers, Samuel, is also, I would say that it's not just the information that you're getting, but you have to be able to track how many people you're talking to, whether you've registered, the appropriate number of people, right? These things have all got to be tracked. So knowing who you register, knowing who you talk to, knowing where your IDs are, knowing who's undecided, those things all go into your plan, right? If you know you need to register 1,000 new voters by October 12th, then you break that down by voters each week. You break it down by voters each day. You can break it down by voters each month. You can break it down by a geographic region, right? All of that stuff. Same thing's true for communications, right? You know, you've got to coordinate two
Can you text
candidate
me to remind me?
appearances.
I won't remember.
What was that, Philip?
I think we had somebody unmuted. Go ahead, Judson.
Okay. I was going to say that these same numbers all go into strategy and tactic around communications. And whether or not, like, everything layers into everything else. Same thing for digital fundraising. If you know you've got to do, your universe is 100,000 people and you know what it's going to take to actually get 12 hits in front of them, it is all determined by your vote goal, right? And planning. So here are the key takeaways that we want you to have: that researching past elections is going to help you derive what you have to do, what your vote goal is, and what your vote deficit is. That you segmenting your voter universes is going to help you be successful in how you contact them and how you determine and establish those IDs. And then finally, your vote goal is going to determine how your campaign is structured, what tactics you use, and what strategy you import and use. So to support the work that you've done so far, there are trainings available for you to calculate your vote goal. The basics and fundamentals of field tactics and the introduction to Vote Builder are all available for you to use it, to do at any time at your own speed, in support of what Christy is doing and what everybody is doing in North Carolina to make sure we change the way things go in the future. Those are the next 3 courses I would actually recommend for you to take. But additional resources are available to you just to scan this document. But if there are, I think I pulled it in pretty close, and I am done with my presentation, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Judson. Let me run through a couple of quick slides that I have with next steps that are specific to North Carolina. I do appreciate the NDTC resources, and I used them quite a bit when I was running for city council. The way I used them, because a lot of their resources are available on the website anytime you want to access them, whereas I'm developing my content week by week. So I would frequently go to the NDTC website, peruse a topic I was interested in, and then if I felt like I couldn't get the hang of it and I would benefit from a live session, then I would sign up. That's how I used it, but I did find some good templates, some of which I have worked into the trainings that we have done already on things like strategy and fundraising. This is the schedule of what's coming up. I'm going to paste it in the chat and I will include it in the follow-up email. So the ones in gray are topics we've already done. I have recorded them. They're on YouTube. I can send them to you if you want. The 2 in red, build your donor list and you are developing your campaign message. Those are also being done in collaboration with NDTC. I'm not sure if Judson's the person, if it'll be somebody else. And then the ones in blue, I am developing the content and delivering. So please consider signing up for whatever you would find helpful. We have shared the Vote Builder request form a couple of times. I just dropped it in the chat again. It is a valuable tool, and when I ran for office in a different state, I had to pay for it out of pocket, and it was like $900. So please take advantage of that. I have been developing this campaign plan template. So feel free to open that up. If you missed this strategy or fundraising sessions, some of the information is in there to help you guide that. I know we're at 1 o'clock, so I'm going fast. We have a Discord channel set up for candidates. It's like Slack, it's like a collaboration messaging tool. And I encourage you to join. And I'm posting there with some regularity. It's also an opportunity for candidates to network among each other, talk, commiserate, share best practices. And now my power is flickering. Candidate office hours, Mondays at 1. I'm there. Sarah's there. Our data director for Vote Builder questions. Our communications director is there. Our digital director. And now I'm done sharing slides. I'm going to stop the recording. If you need to go, no problem. I understand.